So in this video, I want to talk about and compare Western philosophy versus Eastern philosophy. And so I want to start with two quotes from Carl Jung, one summarizing the sort of focus of Western man versus the focus of Eastern man. And this is actually from a book that I've read, which was a very difficult read, but I highly recommend it if you're very interested in sort of the fundamental essence of human nature and psychology, just looking at things in a completely new perspective. I think it's very just an amazing book. So yeah, it's called Psychology and Alchemy by Carl Jung right here. And so to start, the quote of Western philosophy, I'll start right here. Quote, "Western man is held in thrall by the 10,000 things. He sees only particulars. He is ego-bound and thing-bound and unaware of the deep root of all being." So next, I just want to go straight into the quote of Eastern philosophy. And so he says, quote, "Eastern man, on the other hand, experiencing the world of particulars and even his own ego like a dream, he is rooted essentially in the ground, which attracts him so powerfully to his relations with the world that are relativized to a degree that is often incomprehensible to us." So quickly, I just want to summarize what I think each of these mean, and in general, what my impression of Western philosophy has been. And it's that Western philosophy is more focused and captivated by the object, meaning something external of us. And so we've sort of been very, enthralled by the world outside of us and what we can build and create and what we have constructed over time. And so, obtaining material objects and being financially successful is something that Western philosophy is sort of directed at. And so on the other hand, Eastern philosophy is focused on the subject more, and the subject being us. And so it's more of the internal world. So in Eastern philosophy, people are more likely to look inward and to get to the very root of who we are, to our nature and to our very being. And so this is stripping away the ego. And so often it's not that necessarily one is better than the other. It's just that having the approach of Western philosophy often causes a lot more problems, and it's a lot harder to attain, psychological well-being and to reach a state of, I guess, true happiness, whatever that may mean to you, because you're trying to create that from outside of you. And I think that it's somewhat intuitive to realize that true fulfillment and true wholeness and true happiness has to come from the inside first, because ultimately what we perceive externally of us is it's inside out. And so right from the first line, when he speaks on Western man, he says Western man is held in thrall by the 10,000 things. And so right off the bat, you get an understanding that the idea of Western philosophy is often that people get so caught up in the next thing, the next material object, the next shiny thing. And so it's often so hard to reach a point of even being satisfied or, content, because there's always the next thing that you can get. If you're caught up in the numbers, well, numbers are infinite. So you're going to continue to try and get more and more and more and more. And so it's almost impossible to reach true fulfillment from a point of Western philosophy, whereas Eastern philosophy is more of an understanding and awareness and an acceptance of within. It's getting back to the root and the nature of all of us and who we truly are as animals, as primates, and who we really are. And so really a very basic way that I would look at it is that Western philosophy is from surface level up, and Eastern philosophy is from surface level and below. And for me personally, the only real problem I have with taking on a complete Western philosophical approach to life is that you're going to most likely create a lot of problems that in some way, shape, or form don't really exist. you're going to, because then your whole world is consumed by something that is centered around the ego, and the ego being something that is an abstraction of the natural world. And what I mean by an abstraction of the natural world is that the ego is something that we have created to identify ourselves and to create a world that we can interact in. But at the same time, that has come with a lot of unhealthy things. And so then when Carl Jung talks about Eastern man, he says that Eastern man, on the other hand, experiences the world of particulars and even his own ego like a dream. So what he's saying is that people who take on an approach of Eastern philosophy realize that to some degree their ego is illusory. It's not real. Calling myself Eric Abrons, that's an identity, that's an abstraction, but that's not exactly who I am. That's not truly who I am. That's not authentically who I am, because I'm a being, and I'm a being that is unified with nature. And so because we've created these constructs and this language and a way of communicating and identifying and interacting with each other, that doesn't mean that is really real and true to the core of the universe and nature. And so what he's saying is that he says here that he is rooted essentially in the ground, which attracts him so powerfully to his relations with the world that are relativized to a degree that is often incomprehensible to us. So what he's saying is that something that can be very hard for people and something that has taken me a while, something that I'm still continuing to work on, is the fact that your identity and your ego is separate from yourself and separate from who you really are, to your core, to your nature, to your deep down roots and your being.